Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. So I would like to inform you that I have partnered with Anand Reddy Digital Wealth, and today to address us, we have Ankur Gupta as the speaker of the day. He is Associate Vice President with Anand Reddy. He is there with Anand Reddy since last 8 years and is managing AUM of around 600 crores. He has been in the financial industry since last 15 years. And we have Janvi Mishra, who is supporting us today for this session. And she is the Business Development Manager with Anand Rathi. Over to you, Ankur sir.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the brief introduction.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks everyone for joining over the weekend. Thanks for taking out time. So in today's session, typically we'll cover more about how effectively we can manage the portfolios, how effectively we can manage the wealth, so that at least in long-term journey, my wealth creation journey can have a smooth ride rather than a bumpy ride. Because typically, I'm sure most of the investors have experienced high volatility in last 2 years' time. So idea is how effectively we can navigate those cycles of high volatility and typically can have a good wealth creation journey. I'll introduce about Anand. I'll give you an introduction about Anand Rathi. I'm sure most of you have heard the name of Anand Rathi before also. So Anand Rathi started in 1994. Vanessa, just need a confirmation. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So Anand Rathi started in 1994, started with share and broking. Lately, they introduced different companies. We are into wealth management. We are into institutional equity. We are into investment banking. So multiple entities put together, almost 9-10 companies. But currently, if I talk about Anand Rathi Wealth Management, is a flagship business for Anand Rathi. The reason of having that flagship business is because this is one thing, it's a listed entity. Other thing, it's more like a cash cow for Anand Rathi ji. So when I say cash cow, it's more like a high revenue business for Anand Rathi ji. Currently, we are managing almost 94,000 crore under wealth management entity only. Let's make it more like a cash cow business for Anand Rathi ji. And there's a specific thought process behind what we are doing. So we are having a well thought of strategy. What should be the ideal shape and size of the wealth creation journey? So we are more into that particular thing rather than just offering a product. Now coming back when it comes to wealth. So before starting the presentation straight away, I'll give you a brief about what's the actual meaning of wealth. So wealth is never about just a part of the asset class. Wealth is always about what is your overall balance sheet. Wealth is always about where you have invested. So if you have started your investment journey by the age of, let's say, 30, if you are currently at 50, whatever wealth that you have accumulated into different asset classes, it can be real estate, it can be equity, it can be gold, it can be fixed income, put together, what is your overall wealth at what pace that wealth is growing. That's all about wealth. Now, effectively, how can I manage those wealth? Typically, wealth management entities do their work. In most of the places, you'll see, basis the experience I'm saying, most of the investors tend to have managing the liquidity rather than wealth. The difference between liquidity management and wealth management is, suppose any of the investor is having a liquidity of 20 lakh rupees because of some of the other reason they have got at 20 lakh rupees. So अगर मैं मेरा restriction केवल वो 20 lakh तक ही रखूं, then typically, and the possibility can be, if the individual who is having 20 lakh worth of net liquidity having a net worth of 2 crore rupee, so it's nothing but 10% of your overall net worth. If I'm able to manage only 20 lakh, that is nothing but 10%. अगर वो 20% returns भी दे रही है, if the 90% is not in a proper shape, typically will never give wisdom to the portfolio. So idea is always about how effectively we can manage. What's the rationale behind? So for some investors, the return is one of the parameter. And for some investors, when it comes to return management, so I need 20% returns, I need 25% returns, I need 15% returns. What can be the rationale when we target returns? what is the benchmark in India for the returns. So we'll discuss all those things in this presentation. I'll share the presentation with you. This one, right? Perfect. So one thing that we'll cover in this presentation is uh, about the wealth management. Also, we'll discuss about when it comes to equity as an asset class, how effectively we can evaluate equity basis different market conditions, basis different tenure also. Right. So I think we'll cover at the end of this presentation about the technical part. First, we'll start about the wealth journey. So when it comes to wealth, there's a saying for wealth, whatever financial assets or physical assets that you are having, which can be converted into a transactional use, can be considered as a wealth. So it can be a fixed asset class also, it can be a financial asset class also, which can be converted for the transactional use, it's your wealth. Typically, this is one of the sample portfolio that we are having for one of the client. This sample portfolio, so this calculation, what I'm going to tell you about, you can do this calculation by your own also. So what we did is nothing. If you can note down your asset classes, so for any of the investor, I'm sure every investors have bifurcated their asset classes. It can be across between direct equity, that is shares, PMS, if you have real estate, for the if it is from the investment option, gold, equity mutual funds, bank balance, fixed deposit, PPF, EPF, life insurance, any of the asset class where you have invested your money. Typically, what you can do, you can make a note of the amount. How much amount you have invested, what's the current value of that particular allocation. Typically, let's say in this situation, this investor have invested across all the asset classes with a total assets counting around 2 crore rupee. So if you'll see out of this 2 crore, if I'll consider shares, that is, he's having shares of 10 lakh rupees. Typically, it's nothing but 5% of the overall portfolio. So my shares portfolio is nothing but out of total portfolio constitute almost 5%. PMS almost 13%, real estate almost 25%, gold almost 10%, having an asset class of allocation of different asset classes. Now you can mention the expected rate of return. So before even mentioning the expected rate of return, I'll give you a brief idea about different asset classes. So let's consider in India, broadly, there are four asset classes only. It's equity, real estate, fixed income, and gold. Typically, you will see your all the investments are across between these asset classes also only. There can be sub asset classes across these asset classes. So suppose let's say if it is equity. So equity, you have shares, you have mutual funds, you have ULIP plan, you have private equity, PMS, blah blah multiple things. Under real estate, it can be a physical real estate, it can be a paper real estate also. Into gold, it can be a physical gold, it can be ETFs or gold bonds. If it is fixed income instrument, it can be across between FDs, PPF, bonds, debentures, debt funds, across all the asset classes. So typically when I say there are only four asset classes, now four asset classes, if I'll consider, let's say, let's take a period of last 25 years. Last 25 years, equity and real estate are considered to be a value creator asset class. Why I'm saying value creator asset class? Because in certain time periods, both the asset class have actually given good returns. Gold and fixed income instruments are considered to be a value protector asset class. Typically, that gives you preservance. Now, when I say value creator asset class, equity, so in last 15 years, 20 years or 25 years cycle, if you'll see, the average return out of Nifty comes to almost 14-15%. So if an investor have a period of let's say 10 to 15 years of investment, I'm sure उनका portfolio इतना returns दे रहा होगा. Out of real estate, if you'll see, yes, real estate are considered to be a value creator asset class, but last 10 years out of real estate was slag. So if I've invested in let's say 2015 and 2026, typically my average return comes to 5-6%. Then typically we can evaluate this is not the right asset class I'm into. So it's not only about the past, it's also about the future. What is the future of real estate? In India, if I'll give you the data, in India, currently we are sitting with almost 42 to 48 months of unsold inventory. Real estate is a game of demand and supply. There's a hell lot of supply, lesser demand. So for sure, there will be a less principal appreciation also. So the expectation out of real estate across pan India, if I'll talk about, considered to be around 5-6%. So equity still we are bullish because in any of the 10-year cycle, I'm talking about rolling 10-year cycle. If the investor invested in 2011, exited in 2012, invested in 2000, exited in 2021, invested in 2012, exited in 2022. In any of the 10-year rolling cycle, the average comes to almost 13 to 15%. I think that's a good enough data to analyze कि लंबे टाइम तक रहूंगा, I can make money out of equity. इन रियल एस्टेट टिपिकली देयर आर सर्टेन साइकिल्स जहां पे लोगों ने पैसा बनाया है फ्रॉम 2015 टिल 2011 मेजरली. उससे पहले कुछ साइकिल बट लास्ट 10 इयर्स 15 इयर्स वाज स्लैग इनटू रियल एस्टेट. Gold in any of the 10-year cycle average comes down to almost 9.5%, even including these high cycles. And which is अभी gold वापस नीचे आ गया है. If I consider the high cycle also, last 10 years का average return was around 10%. So typically, does it make sense to have gold, major chunk into gold? To the limitation of 15%, you can have exposure into gold. So out of balance sheet, so suppose let's say if I'm having a balance sheet of 55 crore rupee, so to the extent of 75 lakh, I can have gold. I can enjoy gold. So typically, in most of the cases in India, when it comes to a traditional thought process, if I can have an exposure of 75 lakh into gold, then why to go with the physical gold, paper gold? Why not to enjoy jewelry out of gold? I think that make more sense. At least घर पे कोई ना कोई तो खुश रहेगा उससे. Another instrument is a fixed income instrument. Fixed income instrument needs to be the part of the portfolio because that typically gives you a preservance. That's nothing but a peace of mind. But at peace of mind, अगर वो exposure ज़्यादा है, if that exposure is 80% out of your total wealth, trust me, that will haunt you at certain point of time. Because अगर market 14% average return दे रहा है, आपका fixed income 6-7% का return दे रहा है, typically you will going to double your money in 10 years. That's nothing but a rule of 72. If my returns are 7%, rule of 72 says it will going to take almost 10 years to double your money. That's how it is. So typically answer is कि मैं कितना जल्दी अपने पैसे को डबल कर सकता हूं. That's more about wealth creation. Because 5 करोड़ 10 साल में वो 10 करोड़ हो या 10 साल में वो 20 करोड़ हो, that we need to decide, right? That's all about the wealth creation. Because typically there's another saying for wealth. Trust me, even you have experience also, wealth is always about the second generation. You're only going to use part of your wealth. During the course of the journey, you may consume part of your wealth, but typically you're going to pass on your wealth to the next generation. What does that mean? There is no end point for wealth creation. There is no end point for wealth creation, irrespective of the age of the investor. If the investor is sitting at 50, 40, or even 70, there is no end point for wealth creation. The only thing is, when I need money, my money should be readily available. It cannot be like जब मुझे पैसों की जरूरत है वो पैसा कमाने के लिए निकला है. That happens typically in real estate. So if you are having a real estate, let's say 2 BHK real estate, you are having for the investment option wherein you are getting the rental yield also. Out of 2 BHK, suppose let's say that 2 BHK costing you 2 crore rupee. If you need 1 crore of liquidity, you cannot sell 1 BHK out of your 2 BHK, right? That's how it is. So there are certain limitations, certain crunch out of real estate. The average selling period in real estate comes to almost 4 to 6 months. And trust me, buying rate and selling rate are different. अगर आप खरीदने जाएंगे द रेट इज डिफरेंट, आप बेचने जाएंगे द रेट इज डिफरेंट. बिकॉज देयर इज नो रेगुलेटेड मार्केट आउट ऑफ रियल एस्टेट. सब कुछ डिपेंड करता है ब्रोकर के ऊपर. When it comes to evaluating the overall balance sheet, it makes sense to evaluate every asset class, not in isolation specific to any asset class. Now, if you see, this investor is having asset across all the asset classes put together with an expectation that yes, हो सकता है equity portfolio उनका 12% average return दे रहा हो, real estate 4-5% returns, gold almost 8%, mutual funds almost 12%. Put together, if you'll see, even if I'll consider 1% extra also, this client portfolio is yielding nothing but 7-8% kind of returns. So typically in quantified terms, my 100 is becoming 108. पैसा बनाया है मैंने, but that's truly a growth? Answer is no. Right? The rationale is because when it comes to return on the investments, when it comes to return on the overall wealth that you have accumulated, in India, the benchmark for the return is inflation. at least I should get higher returns than inflation. Now, for the inflation, it can be debatable also, but the thought process says what government declared inflation cannot be yours and mine inflation, because government declared inflation is basis the mass consumption. So if you look for the India story, India chart, it's more like a pyramid. In the bottom of pyramid, there are maximum chunks that comes under a BPL category, right? So if government consider those segments also, so typically what does that mean? That government average inflation cannot be yours and mine. So government average inflation for last 10 years, if you'll see, it comes to almost 7.5% for last 20 years. For last 10 years, it comes to almost 6 point something percentage. What does that mean? If I'll consider the average inflation is 6% for you and me, answer is no. Typically 6% kind of inflation or 5% kind of inflation can be आप घर से निकले, आपका बिल्डिंग का गार्ड है, आपकी हाउस हेल्प है, your driver can be their inflation around 4-5%. But for the segment that we are into is actually having an inflation of more than 9-10%. The expenses that we are having is actually growing with an average of almost 10%. So government calculate inflation basis the mass consumption, wherein the 50-55% goes towards the food and fuel. So the individual who is earning 100 rupee, अगर उसका 50 रुपए खाने की तरफ जा रहा है, उसका इन्फ्लेशन 4-5% हो सकता है. But in our situation, if you'll see, it is not more than 10-15% towards the food and fuel. The expenses that we are having is actually growing by more than 10-11%. So one thing for sure, my overall wealth, my balance sheet should grow by 10-11%. Then typically you can say, yes, my money is growing. Second thing comes to why we are doing all those investments, why we are deferring our today's savings for the future consumption. That is typically nothing but for the future lifestyle also. To have that future lifestyle protection cost in India, that protection cost comes to almost 2-3%. So now my need, my right out of total balance sheet comes to 13-14%. I should get at least 13-14% so that I can say I am beating the inflation. And trust me, if you look for the data, in India, 98% of the Indian balance sheet are struggling to get to a double digit kind of returns. 98% of the Indian balance sheet are actually roaming around 8-9%, 7-8% kind of returns. Only 1 or 2% kind of investors are actually enjoying 14-15% kind of returns on their balance sheet. That's the harsh reality. So अगर आप कैलकुलेट करेंगे, यू विल सी आपका इक्विटी वाला पोर्शन हो सकता है 14-15% रिटर्न्स दे रहा हो. But if you see what's the percentage allocation, because while having experience on those balance sheet evaluations, 5 crore की अगर किसी की बैलेंस शीट है, in most of the cases we have seen 50% goes towards the real estate as an investment, because real estate needs high amount also. So अगर मेरा 50% that is nothing but 2.5 crore अगर real estate में गया, that's nothing but 2.5 करोड़ रुपी. मेरा किसी ने मुझे बोला कि नहीं, म्यूचुअल फंड और शेयर्स में भी पैसा डालना चाहिए. Have invested my money. I've invested 1 crore rupee into mutual funds and shares also. That is nothing but 20% of your overall balance sheet. किसी ने मुझे कहा कि नहीं, मुझे फिक्स इनकम भी रखना चाहिए because that gives me a peace of mind. I've invested crore rupee into fixed income instrument also. That is nothing but almost 20%. मैंने गोल्ड में almost 50 लाख रुपया रखा. That is nothing but 10%. If you evaluate this balance sheet, the average return comes to almost 7.5%. So with no harsh thing, I have extended my arms to different asset classes. But at the end, what I'm getting is nothing but 7.5% average return. That means typically when it comes to evaluating the overall balance sheet, asset class plays a major role. Having a 7% risk-free rate for the investor who is investing a crore rupee, the accumulation can be around 1.9 crore. But at the rate of 12%, the accumulation can be around 7.49 crore. That's the difference that we can create, right? So typically, we need to decide at what pace we need to run. Typically, now when it comes to having a long-term view on the investments, in most of the cases, you will see the expectation is simple that yes, my return should be reasonably good. So when it comes to reasonably good, for me, for us, even say the definition is very clear. If I can double my money in every 5 years, typically I'm at a good pace. I'm talking about doubling my wealth every 5 years, not the part of the wealth. So reasonable returns for us is almost 12 to 15%. At least I'm beating the inflation of 10%. Second thing is high probability of returns when markets are volatile. So I don't want my dependency on market when markets are roaming here and there. I need high probability of returns even when markets are volatile, so that at least I can have a visibility. I don't want a high swing in my portfolio. Full liquidity in the short period. So if I need money, my money should be readily available. I'm sitting at, let's say, 1 crore rupee. Every 5 years, if I double my money, 1 crore will become 2 crore, 2 crore will become 10 crore. 4 crore at the end of 10th year. Out of 4 crore rupee, if I need 50 lakh, my 50 lakh should be readily available. But why to block the opportunity for remaining 3.5 crore for the future growth? That's the thought process that we are carrying. Negligible risk of capital loss in the medium term. That's the main thing, because that typically gives you more like a cushion to remain invested for the longer period. It's nothing but a psychological impact कि अगर मेरा पोर्टफोलियो मुझे अच्छा दिखेगा, it gives me a lot of patience to remain invested for the longer period. अगर मुझे 2-3 साल 5 साल के अंदर अगर मेरा पोर्टफोलियो इधर उधर दिखेगा, that gives me a hit कि यार better to shift my money to other asset classes. That's nothing but a psychological impact, and trust me, एक डेटा आपको मैं दिखाता हूं. I think that will give more cushion. So this is nothing but a study done by 3 professors from Chicago. What they say is asset allocation plays a major role. दिस इज द डिसाइडिंग फैक्टर कि आपको लॉन्ग टर्म रिटर्न्स क्या ड्राइव करेंगे. एसेट एलोकेशन अगर गलत हुआ, 93% ऑफ योर पोर्टफोलियो रिटर्न्स गोइंग टू इम्पैक्ट. सो अगर वो एसेट एलोकेशन इक्विटी की जगह रियल एस्टेट चुना, ट्रस्ट मी, आप शायद 10 साल में खुद इवेल्युएट कर सकते हैं उस चीज को. सो 93% ऑफ द इम्पैक्ट कमिंग फ्रॉम एसेट एलोकेशन. लेट्स टेक एन एग्जांपल. सो सपोज लेट्स से आउट ऑफ एसेट एलोकेशन आई हैव ऑप्टेड रियल एस्टेट. रियल एस्टेट मैंने एसेट एलोकेशन चुना. सिक्योरिटी सिलेक्शन इज 5%. आउट ऑफ रियल एस्टेट अगर मैंने लोधा की जगह राहेजा सुना, द इम्पैक्ट इज नथिंग बट 5%. मार्केट टाइमिंग ओनली 2%. इन 10 साल के साइकिल में मैंने आज नहीं डाल के 6 महीने बाद रियल एस्टेट में पैसा डाला होता, इन 10 ईयर साइकिल द इम्पैक्ट इज नथिंग बट 2%. सो अगर मेरा इम्पैक्ट एसेट एलोकेशन का गलत हुआ, ट्रस्ट मी, मेरी पूरी पिक्चर गलत हो जाएगी. नाउ लेट्स हैव अ रियलिटी चेक. The investor who invested a crore rupees, so this is the reality of India now. A 1 crore rupee invested in 1990 into different asset classes, क्या story होती? Fixed deposit almost 13 crore, gold almost 25 crore. In quantified terms, पैसा दिख रहा है. 1 करोड़ मेरा 25 करोड़ हो गया है. मेरे दादाजी ने पैसा डाला था. I'm enjoying my money now. कितना आप कर सकते थे? व्हाट इज द पोटेंशियल ऑफ डिफरेंट एसेट क्लासेस? रियल एस्टेट 25 to 34 करोड़, सेंसेक्स ऑलमोस्ट 94 करोड़. म्यूचुअल फंड व्हेन दे स्टार्टेड इन 1996, सेंसेक्स से मूव करा होता ऑलमोस्ट 900 से 1200, 1300, 1400, 1500 करोड़, राइट? हाउ मेनी इन्वेस्टर्स एक्चुअली हैव मेड दोस मनीज? आंसर इज देयर आर ओनली फ्यू इन्वेस्टर्स. यू कैन नेम दोस इन्वेस्टर्स also. The rationale is because psychological impact says most of the investors tend to lose out patience because of the market volatility. That's how, जो अपना पहला एक नैरेटिव था, how effectively we can navigate those market volatility. Because trust me, अगर मुझे पता है that I'm going to take equity as an asset class for the higher returns, answer is equity will come with a high volatility. That's the nature of the beast, right? तो उस वॉलेटिलिटी को, डेट मींस अगर इफ आई एम ओनली कंसिडरेशन कि मैं रिटर्न्स के बेसिस के ऊपर इन्वेस्टमेंट कर रहा हूं, ट्रस्ट मी, सॉरी टू यूज दिस वर्ड, बट आप उल्टे मुंह गिरेंगे. दैट्स द रियलिटी ऑफ मार्केट. With returns, the other parameter that is important is the risk parameter. How effectively I can navigate or minimize risk of the portfolio. That is nothing but a risk mitigation. शायद आपने कहीं सुना होगा कि it's important to mitigate risk from the portfolio. And trust me, risk is never about moderate, conservative, and aggressive. Those are English terms. Risk is always about numerical. How effectively I can quantify those risks also. 10 का रिस्क है, मैं उस 10 के रिस्क को कैसे कम कर सकता हूं, सो वो रिस्क है. सो इंपॉर्टेंट इज विद अ हाई प्रोबेबिलिटी ऑफ रिटर्न्स, how effectively I can mitigate the risk of the portfolio also. That's where you can say that yes, I'm ready now. I'm having a all-weather portfolio. I'm ready to face every challenge out of market, because typically market have three challenges. Market can give you bull cycle, but trust me, having that bull cycle, we'll see the probability also in 5 years. What is the probability to get to that bull cycle? Other harsh reality is market will leave you in a range bound cycle. Market will give you only flat returns kind of thing. Third situation can be market may give you negative returns, जो ideally हर किसी ने experience करा होगा. Now, one thing for sure that typically we are bullish on equity. We are bullish on equity because last 25 years की journey, last 35 years की journey equity की बहुत अच्छी रही है. So in Nifty का अगर आप chart देखेंगे, you can experience this. Nifty का अगर आप chart देखेंगे from 2000 till date अगर आप देखेंगे, it's always a upward journey. It's always a upward journey. But short periods के अंदर अगर आप circle करके देखेंगे, there can be flat cycle also, there can be negative cycles also. So what does that mean? Typically, does it make sense to look from the short-term perspective? Answer is no. Equity is never meant for short-term returns. So anything, that's where we segregate also, anything, any of the goal coming with a less than 3 years tenure, never expose that amount to equity. Equity is always about long term. 3 साल से कम का अगर मेरा कोई गोल है, better to park that money into a fixed income instrument. उसके अलावा जो भी आपका पैसा बचता है, जो आपके गोल 3 साल प्लस वाले हैं, यू कैन इफेक्टिवली लाइक एक्सपोज दैट अमाउंट टू इक्विटी. नाउ दिस इज इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरी. इन लास्ट 35 years the nifty average comes to almost 13.6%. So you'll see there are certain good cycles also, there are certain bad cycles also. Keeping an average, it comes to almost 13.6%. So typically nifty ka average is good. But you'll see that 13.6% is typically because of few bumper years. So the better studies or having a reality check is, अगर मैं बेस्ट 3 फाइनेंशियल ईयर मार्केट से हटा दूं, व्हाट्स द एवरेज ऑफ निफ्टी? बिकॉज ट्रस्ट मी, नो वन नोज when the bumper year will going to come. It can be next year, it can be after 5 years. Trust me, even the best of the best fund manager don't know. They only can anticipate basis the earnings data. वो भी डेटा अपन देखेंगे. अगर मैं 3 बेस्ट फाइनेंशियल ईयर हटा देता हूं, my average comes down to 6.5%. What does that mean? We also need to prepare for this cycle. It's not only about always 14% kind of returns out of Nifty. We also know there can be a cycle when market gives you nothing but 6-7% kind of average, right? So typically now I also need to be prepared for my portfolio कि what if अगर market ने केवल 6.5% का returns दिया, right? Now, when it comes to picking the right asset class, first thing is I'm convinced कि equity में पैसा डालना चाहिए. Nifty ने अच्छे returns दिए हैं, but out of equity also there are different asset classes. It can be shares, it can be mutual funds, PMS, private equity, ULIP, blah blah, multiple things, right? So it's important to evaluate those asset classes also कि मुझे equity के अंदर किस जगह पैसा डालना चाहिए. So while evaluating, there are certain parameters to evaluate those asset classes. It can be return, risk, cost, liquidity, taxation having a brief. So returns, at least it should beat the inflation, giving 10-12% kind of returns. Risk, it can be measured through a standard deviation. So standard deviation is a mathematical tool to measure risk of the portfolio. It needs to be lower than the benchmark. Cost, there needs to be a minimal cost attached to that particular asset class. Liquidity, when I need money, it should be available. Taxation, it needs to be tax efficient. So when you evaluate different asset classes, equity PMS, shares, mutual funds, ULIP, private equity, AIF funds, will amazed to see म्यूचुअल फंड इज द ओनली एसेट क्लास जो आपको सारे पैरामीटर्स में टिक मार्क देगा. देयर आर सर्टेन टिक मार्क्स ऑन अदर एसेट क्लासेस, बट पांचों पैरामीटर्स पे अगर आप देखेंगे, इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड इज द ओनली एसेट क्लास. दैट्स वेयर वी हैव कन्विंस नाउ कि आउट ऑफ इक्विटी मुझे म्यूचुअल फंड करना चाहिए. इन स्पाइट हैविंग पेरेंट कंपनी शेयर एंड ब्रोकिंग on the wealth management platform, there's a single exposure on the share and broking. We are not supposed to tell you कि कौन सा शेयर लेना चाहिए, because I know the average life out of equity broking is nothing but 4-5 years. So I don't want to go on the path जहां पे मुझे पता है कि यार मैं डगमगाऊंगा, because this will going to give me nothing but a bumpy ride. Typically in a wealth management journey, we are convinced I need a smooth ride. So typically in a long-term journey, I'm convinced mutual fund typically is a suitable asset class for the investor. अब म्यूचुअल फंड्स के अंदर भी अगर आप देखेंगे, द अदर हार्श रियलिटी इज इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स, यस इट्स अ गुड एसेट क्लास. इट टिपिकली मेंट फॉर द बुल साइकिल. मार्केट चलेगा तो मुझे रिटर्न्स मिलेगा. इफ आई टॉक अबाउट द प्रोबेबिलिटी ऑफ 5 ईयर टेन्योर, सो 5 ईयर टेन्योर आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट अ प्रोबेबिलिटी. 2001 में डाला, 2006 में निकाला, 2002 में डाला, 2007 में निकाला. इन एनी ऑफ द 5 ईयर्स के रोलिंग पीरियड के अंदर डेली रोलिंग द प्रोबेबिलिटी इज 51%। मार्केट आपको 12% रिटर्न देगा, निफ्टी म्यूचुअल फंड्स आपको 15% रिटर्न देगा। द प्रोबेबिलिटी इज 51%। दैट मीन्स 49% चांसेस आई मे बी लोअर देन द लॉन्ग टर्म एवरेजेस। मेरे रिटर्न उससे कम हो सकते हैं। टिपिकली इन मोस्ट ऑफ द केसेस, आई डोंट नो, इक्विटी की जब बातें होती हैं तो एडवाइजर हमेशा फैंसी बातें करता है, राइट। इट्स ऑलवेज अबाउट गुड साइकिल्स, राइट। इट्स ऑलवेज अबाउट, नहीं सर पैसा है, लॉन्ग टर्म में पैसा ही पैसा है, राइट। बट वी ऑल्सो नीड टू डाइजेस्ट रियलिटी कि दिस इज द रियलिटी। 49% चांसेस सर 5 साल के टेन्योर के अंदर आई मे गिव यू लोअर रिटर्न्स ऑल्सो। दैट्स अ हार्श रियलिटी वन नीड टू एक्सेप्ट। Now, mathematically, if I wanted to increase the probability, because my mathematics says कि wealth management cannot be always about English. It's always about mathematics कि मैं मेरी probability को कैसे बढ़ा सकता हूँ। How can I make a full proof portfolio so that मैं हर market condition में खड़ा रहूं। जब मार्केट 10% से टूटे, आई एम ओके कि मैं 94, 95, 96 पे आके रुक जाऊं, बट आई डोंट वांट अ डेंट इन माय पोर्टफोलियो टू द एक्सटेंट ऑफ निफ्टी। अगर मार्केट भागे तो एटलीस्ट मैं निफ्टी से ज्यादा भागूं। That's the reality that we are accepted with. Now, mutual funds we have combined with structure products. So typically, अगर आप Google करेंगे market linked debenture structure product, you will came to know कि mutual fund structure product market linked debentures are typically meant for the HNI, ultra HNI. जहां पे पोर्टफोलियो साइज 5 करोड़ 10 करोड़ का है, उनके लिए अच्छा है, बिकॉज दैट गिव्स अ रेजिस्टेंस टू द पोर्टफोलियो। एटलीस्ट दिस साइकिल, दिस एसेट क्लास विल गिव यू हायर रिटर्न्स even when market gives you lower returns. But when it comes to having this asset class into different portfolios, तो जो राइट 5-10 करोड़ वाले इन्वेस्टर का है, आई थिंक द सेम राइट कम्स विद 1 करोड़ वाले इन्वेस्टर का भी। then why should 1 crore wala investor will not going to enjoy that particular part? So yes, we come up with the lower ticket size structure product also. That's where we say structure product are typically meant for every market condition. Why this is a combination of mutual fund and asset class? Because typically mutual fund is only geared for the bull cycle. I also need a asset class that typically works in flat cycle and a bear cycle. Now, if you see the condition says if Nifty gives you 6% kind of returns, a structure product can give you 14% returns with a high probability, almost 85% probability. Put together, it comes to almost 67, 70% probability. So what I did is nothing. I have prepared my portfolio for bull cycle now. Market चला तो मुझे returns मिला. Market नहीं चला तो at least I'm enjoying double digit kind of returns. When market gives you nothing but 5, 6, 7% kind of returns, I'm enjoying double digit kind of returns. When Nifty gives you negative returns, at least I'm showing capital resistance in the portfolio. We'll see वो किस तरीके से काम कर रहा है. Another important parameter that I have discussed is risk parameter. रिटर्न, हर कोई रिटर्न की बात करता है, बहुत अच्छी चीज है, रिटर्न मिलना चाहिए, फॉर श्योर एवरीवन इज रनिंग बिहाइंड रिटर्न्स, बट इंपॉर्टेंट इज योर रिस्क विल डिफाइन व्हाट रिटर्न्स यू आर गोइंग टू गेट। अगर आपका रिस्क पैरामीटर हाई है, आपका रिटर्न पैरामीटर भी हाई रहेगा, आपका रेंज ऑफ रिटर्न इज ऑल्सो हाई। गिविंग यू एन एग्जाम्पल, सो टॉप 10 लार्ज कैप एंड मिड कैप स्टॉक पोर्टफोलियो का विद एन एलोकेशन ऑफ 60-40, द स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन कम्स टू ऑलमोस्ट 35%। इस 35% का मतलब क्या है सर? अगर निफ्टी का एवरेज 14 का है, अगर निफ्टी का एवरेज 14 का है, मैं 14 माइनस 35 एंड 14 प्लस 35 करूंगा, दैट गिव्स यू अ रेंज ऑफ रिटर्न। तो 14 माइनस 35 comes to almost 20 minus 21, 14 plus 35 comes to almost 49. Your returns range can be minus 21 से लेकर 49. That means there's a high swing. थोड़ा सा टेक्निकली बताऊं, इट्स नथिंग बट एक के कोफिशिएंट के ऊपर अगर मैं इसको वेरी करता हूं, तो एक के कोफिशिएंट के ऊपर क्या आता है, इट्स नथिंग बट अ रूल ऑफ स्टैटिस्टिक्स बेसिकली। तो वो मेरे को आइडिया देता है व्हाट कैन बी माय रेंज ऑफ रिटर्न्स। एक के कोफिशिएंट पे अगर मार्केट मूव करता है तो -21 से लेकर माय रिटर्न्स कैन बी +49। दैट्स वेयर, अगर आपने देखा होगा, जब मार्केट भागता है तो शेयर्स पोर्टफोलियो अच्छा भागता है, लेकिन जब मार्केट टूटता है तो आपका पोर्टफोलियो ऑलमोस्ट डबल से टूटता है। Important. Another instrument is equity mutual funds. Equity mutual funds comes with a standard deviation of 14. Nifty का standard deviation is almost 18.39 का. Now, why there's a need of infusing structure product in the portfolio with mutual funds? So mutual fund is plan A. It needs to be the part of the portfolio because typically why we are investing into equity to enjoy bumper years. So, but on the other side, we don't know, we really don't know कि bumper year कब आने वाला है. That's where we are increasing the probability by infusing structure product in the portfolio so that I can even mitigate risk from the portfolio. Put together, mutual fund and structure giving me a standard deviation of 9.3. Now, in comparison to stock portfolio, the risk is down by almost 60%. In comparison to only mutual funds, in isolation, अगर मैं केवल mutual fund करता हूँ, the risk can be down by almost 33%. In comparison to Nifty, that is index, the risk can be down by almost 30%. So important is to get to the same returns. What is the risk I'm taking? If it is a lower risk to get to the same returns, I think you'll enjoy the ride. 9.3 का मतलब सर क्या हुआ? 14 minus 9, 14 plus 9 can be your range of return. 5% से लेकर 23% रिटर्न तक मुझे मिल सकते हैं. That's the range of the returns. That means I have reduced the swing in the portfolio. वही अगर आप एफडी में देखेंगे, it's almost negligible. That's the only reason एफडी का पोर्टफोलियो ज्यादा हिलता नहीं है. But it comes to the higher risk of रिटर्न्स, क्योंकि वहां पे 6%, 7% से ज्यादा रिटर्न्स नहीं मिलेंगे. इन्फ्लेशन ही 9% है. सो टिपिकली दैट्स अ हायर रिस्क दैट यू आर कैरिंग. वॉलेटिलिटी इज अ रिस्क, बट इट कैन बी रिड्यूस विद द टाइम फ्रेम. So this is the life portfolios wherein it says अगर निफ्टी 12% के रिटर्न्स रेंज में रहती है, that is nothing but a full phase. Your mutual fund can give you 15% kind of returns. Structure product is giving 14.5% kind of returns. My returns comes to almost 14-15%. I have generated higher returns than Nifty. Another cycle is range bound cycle. Nifty is only giving me 6% kind of returns. My mutual fund can give me 9% kind of returns. That's nothing but a 3% alpha. That's the expectation that we are carrying. But still, structure product is giving me 14.5% kind of returns. That means I'm able to get to almost 11.9% kind of returns. Almost double the Nifty returns. There can be one scenario also if Nifty gives you 20% kind of returns, जो हुआ भी है. तो 20% के अंदर म्यूचुअल फंड कैन गिव यू 23% kind of returns, but structure product is still giving you 14.5. That's where we'll be at par with Nifty. But in other two cycles, we are having high alpha. What if Nifty gives you negative returns? I'm able to resist my portfolio. 5 साल के अंदर निफ्टी ने 15% का नेगेटिव रिटर्न दिया, ईयरली -3% रिटर्न. आई एम नॉट लूजिंग माई कैपिटल मच. तो आई डोंट वांट कि अगर निफ्टी 15% टूटा, 100 का 85 पे गया, आई डोंट वांट मेरा पोर्टफोलियो 95 से नीचे जाए. दैट्स वेयर अब अगर 85 या 95 से फ्यूचर ग्रोथ आई, मार्केट 10% भागा, 85 वाला पोर्टफोलियो विल रीच टू ऑलमोस्ट 94, 93. But 95 वाला पोर्टफोलियो will come down to almost 104. That's nothing but a base value effect कि अगर मैंने मेरी बेस वैल्यू को बचा के रखा, मेरी फ्यूचर वैल्यू उतनी ज्यादा होगी. So on the mutual fund side, there's a rigorous process that we follow. There's a team of almost 200 research people who does day in day out tracking of the mutual funds, because the universe is too huge. Almost 921 open-ended mutual fund. Out of open-ended mutual fund of 921, getting to a recommended basket of few schemes, it needs a proper research. Because what data suggests, typically when we connect one-on-one basis, we can go deep dive on the research also, giving a brief glimpse. So in last 25 years, top 25 schemes की अगर मैं बात करूं, the best have given 23% return. In the same time frame, worst have given 7% kind of returns. So what does that mean? It's not about कि मैंने किसी ने मुझे म्यूचुअल फंड बोला, मैंने म्यूचुअल फंड लेके खरीद के छोड़ दिया. हो सकता है आपने जिस टाइम पे खरीदा वो टॉप रेटेड टॉप रैंकिंग म्यूचुअल फंड था, बट अगर आपने उसको रियलाइन रिवैल्यूएट नहीं करा, देयर कैन बी अ पॉसिबिलिटी वो आज शायद बॉटम में बैठा हो. And trust me, if I'll talk about the data, there is only 18%, 18% probability कि जो मेरे इस साल के टॉप रेटेड म्यूचुअल फंड्स हैं वो 3 साल बाद भी टॉप रेटेड रहेंगे. टॉप क्वार्टाइल में जो म्यूचुअल फंड्स हैं वो टॉप क्वार्टाइल में रहेंगे 3 साल के बाद भी. द प्रोबेबिलिटी इज जस्ट 18%. So in mutual funds also there's a big volatility. Now to get to a recommended basket, that is nothing but a top quartile mutual funds, one need to have a regular realignment. One need to have a regular track of the mutual funds, because in mutual funds also it cannot be fill it, shut it, forget it. If you keep it like that, there's 100% chances you will end up having baggage in the portfolio. And typically that baggage will erode your capital and can reduce your yield of the portfolio. So yes, it's important to evaluate your mutual funds also. It's never about the fresh investments. It's also about the existing investments. At what pace your existing investments are growing. At what shape and size your existing investments are. So mutual funds, yes, we play a major role. That's my USP basically. So we are having almost 150 people purely into mutual fund side, and the objective out of mutual fund is getting to almost 3% alpha. So we do quantitative and qualitative analysis. On the quantitative side, it's nothing but a technical. We evaluate almost 101 statistical parameters. We shortlist some of the parameters basis the highest correlation. It can be negative and positive correlation, but needs to be a high correlation. Out of those parameters, we left out a certain set of funds. On those set of funds, we do a qualitative filter. Qualitative filter is nothing but having a hygiene check on the fund houses. मुझे आईसीआईसीआई पसंद है, हो सकता है आपको एचडीएफसी पसंद हो सकता है किसी को कोटक पसंद हो. बट व्हाट आर द रैशनल्स बिहाइंड दोज लाइकिंग, राइट? We also need, because typically it's nothing but your hard earned money, right? So it's your basic right कि आप उस फंड मैनेजर को इवेल्युएट करें. जो जिस फंड मैनेजर को आप पैसा दे रहे हैं उस फंड मैनेजर को इवेल्युएट करें. So there's a mathematical tool, there's a ratio called Istray ratio. Istray ratio will give you the stock picking capability of the fund manager, कि वो कितना उसका राइट टू रॉन्ग रेशियो है, वो बेंचमार्क से हटके कितना रिटर्न जनरेट कर पा रहा है. सो दैट्स योर बर्थ राइट, राइट? सो टिपिकली इन पास्ट अगर आप देखेंगे देयर आर सर्टेन फंड्स जो बहुत अच्छा परफॉर्म कर रहे थे, बट बिकॉज ऑफ दिस अ चेंज इन द फंड मैनेजर, दिस अ चेंज इन द टीम ऑफ द फंड मैनेजर, फंड हैव सीन द मेजर डाउनफॉल. So it's important to track all those things also. Those are nothing but a hygiene check. So we do have a team of senior people who does day in day out tracking of those mutual funds also, कि क्या उनकी probability है, what's the fund manager view, or that particular fund manager is biased to any specific stock. So those are hygiene things. What is the profitability of the fund houses? There are certain elimination also that we do. We don't invest in NFOs because there is no track period of those NFOs. We don't invest in a fund houses जहाँ पे 3,000 करोड़ से कम का इक्विटी AUM है. We don't invest in a scheme जहाँ पे 1,000 करोड़ से कम का scheme AUM है. These are certain hygiene factors that we consider. After this, we left with certain set of schemes that comes under a recommended category of mutual fund. Even the percentage allocation is also predefined कि किस स्कीम में कितना जाना चाहिए basis some theory. It cannot be like कि मुझे आईसीआईसीआई पसंद है, let's go higher weightage towards आईसीआईसीआई. The percentage allocation is also predefined कि किस स्कीम में कितना जाना चाहिए basis the market cap allocation. Market cap allocation is nothing but large cap, mid cap and small cap में क्या allocation होना चाहिए. And that allocation is not based on the scheme. It's based on the stocks that they are holding. Second instrument that we have added is structured product. So plan A is mutual fund, plan B is structured product. Irrespective of the ticket size of the investor, if the investor is coming with 500 crore, 5 crore, or even 50 lakhs, it will remain same. It will be in mutual funds and structured product. These are the only two things that we do, and typically these two things will solve all your purpose. Structured products are nothing, it's a debentures that comes with a conditional coupon. The only difference is if I'll only invest in bonds and debenture, it comes with a fixed coupon. Debentures और bonds मुझे 8-9% से ज्यादा रिटर्न नहीं दे सकते, बट माय आइडिया इज टू गेट टू दैट 13-14% काइंड ऑफ रिटर्न्स. अब मुझे अगर वो 13-14% रिटर्न्स पे पहुंचना है, आई नीड टू हैव द एक्सपोजर ऑफ इक्विटी ऑल्सो. दैट्स वेयर स्ट्रक्चर प्रोडक्ट आर डिजाइन दैट यस डिबेंचर्स, लेकिन उसको मैं निफ्टी रैपिंग के साथ अगर रैप करूंगा, अगर मैं वहां पे कुछ कंडीशंस डाल दूंगा, आई एंड अप हैविंग हायर रिटर्न्स. सो द कंडीशन से इज if I have invested 100 rupee, the first condition is अगर निफ्टी मुझे साल का 6%, डेट मीन्स ऑलमोस्ट 5 साल का अगर 36% रिटर्न देती है, दैट वेरीज फ्रॉम प्रोडक्ट टू प्रोडक्ट, आई विल गेट 14.4% का कैगर. इन डीप अगर आप देखेंगे, सो दिस इज वन ऑफ द प्रोडक्ट वेयर इन दिस कम्स विद द टिकट साइज ऑफ 1.1 करोड़. So minimum ticket size is 1.1 crore. For this, the portfolio, ideal portfolio size needs to be around 2.5 crore. So अगर आपका शेयर्स, म्यूचुअल फंड्स, all those asset classes मिला के 2.5 करोड़ हो रहा है, will go with this product. The product specification says अगर निफ्टी मुझे 5 साल में केवल 37% रिटर्न्स देता है, सेंसेक्स, सो ऑलमोस्ट लेट्स से सेंसेक्स करंटली इट्स ऑलमोस्ट 73,000, ऑलमोस्ट आज की डेट में 77,000 के करीब है. तो लेट्स कंसीडर उतना अपन ग्रोथ ऊपर ले लेंगे. सो करंट लेवल अगर सेंसेक्स का 73,000 है, in 5 years if Sensex touches down to almost 37%, that is nothing but 1 lakh level, your money will be double. मेरा 1 करोड़ ऑलमोस्ट 2 करोड़ हो गया, right? Now 37% movement pe I'm enjoying 102% returns into IRR terms. With almost 6% movement, I'm enjoying 14.24% returns. Now getting to the same returns out of mutual fund or shares, at least Sensex 1,47,000 तो नहीं, लेकिन almost 1.25 लाख तक होना चाहिए सेंसेक्स. सो यहाँ पे डिफरेंस क्या क्रिएट करा? 1.25 लाख सेंसेक्स की जगह केवल 1 लाख सेंसेक्स लेवल पे ही मेरा पैसा डबल हो रहा है. दैट्स वेयर आई हैव इंक्रीज द प्रोबेबिलिटी. बट स्टिल वाई वी आर टेकिंग एक्सपोजर ऑफ म्यूचुअल फंड्स? बिकॉज देयर कैन बी सर्टेन सिनेरियोज इन 5 साल के पीरियड के अंदर 1 साल बंपर ईयर आ जाए. Giving you a right example also, let's consider 2022-23. In 2022-23, Nifty have given minus 0.6% returns. 23-24, Nifty have given 29% returns. 24-25, Nifty have given 5% returns. 25-26, last year Nifty have given almost 4-5% kind of returns. That means in last 4-5 years, we have seen every market cycles. We have seen the bumper year also. We have seen the negative years also. What does that mean? Yes, I need to prepare my portfolio in such a way so that I can navigate all those cycles. You'll see the standard deviation is almost 4.25 and the product IRR is 14.24. So this product coming with a ticket size of 1.1 crore. Suppose let's say I'm only having a portfolio of 1 crore rupee. That's where we say there needs to be a lower ticket size structure product also. The only condition is this says कि अगर निफ्टी मुझे 5 साल में 36% मूवमेंट देता है, I'll enjoy 94% returns. 36% movement पे enjoying 94% returns, IRR comes to 13.5%. So almost 6.6% movement पे I'm enjoying 13.5% returns with higher probability. So let's say 25,600 is the level, Nifty 34,000 पे पहुंचता है, my money will be almost double. Now out of same mutual funds, almost Nifty 41, 42, 43,000 level पे पहुंचना चाहिए so that मैं 94% returns enjoy कर सकूं. यहाँ पे मैं केवल 34,000 लेवल पे ही इंजॉय कर रहा हूँ. दैट्स वेयर द प्रोबेबिलिटी सेज कि अगर मैं 50-50 या 60-40 अलोकेशन रखता हूं बिटवीन म्यूचुअल फंड्स एंड प्लान बी, आई विल एंजॉय अ गुड राइड. सो द अलोकेशन दैट वी रिकमेंड इज आइदर 50-50 और 60-40 बिटवीन प्लान ए एंड प्लान बी. अगर थोड़ा सा रिस्क एपेटाइट ज्यादा है, कैन हैव 60% allocation towards mutual funds. If you think you are a conservative investor, can have 50-50 allocation. So there are certain secondary structures also that comes with a 10 lakh ticket size. So these secondary structures are nothing. Primary investor ने exit कर दिया in between 5 years tenure में, let's say 3 साल में ही exit कर दिया because of the unforeseen event. उस केस के अंदर we can come with the secondary structures also. Secondary structures comes with a specific target nifty, tenure also specific, yield will be much lesser. It will be in the range of around 11 to 13%. तो specification that may vary. जैसे ये current structure says if Nifty gives you win 561 almost 1.5 साल का प्रोडक्ट है, 1.5 साल के अंदर अगर निफ्टी 23,142 के ऊपर रहता है, अगर निफ्टी 1.5 साल बाद भी 23,142 के ऊपर रहता है, you will going to get 12.5% का IRR. That means from the current level, if Nifty even goes down, you will enjoy 12.5% IRR. Can be a good alternative to your debt portfolio. फिक्स इनकम वाले पोर्टफोलियो के लिए अच्छा है, आप अपनी yield बढ़ा पाएंगे. So I'm done with the presentation. What we can do is we can have a complimentary. So we can give you complimentary portfolio review. As I mentioned, it's never about the fresh money. It's also about to evaluate your existing portfolios. Are they in a proper shape or size or not? So we can evaluate your mutual fund investments. We can give you multiple parameters evaluation. We can evaluate your stock portfolio, PMS, insurance policies also. And target is effectively your portfolio needs to be aligned. It needs to be aligned with a specific thought process of wealth creation. Now what we can do is we can take question and answers. If you have any questions, you can post those questions into chat box. I think I'll be happy to take those questions. Any which ways, my team will connect with you for the one-to-one meetings also, so we can go deep dive on a individual basis on a specific portfolio requirements. So I think we'll wait for another 5 minutes for the Q&A. If you have any. Is there?
किसी भी पार्टिसिपेंट को कोई भी क्वेश्चन है तो यहाँ पे टाइप कर सकते हैं।
Even if you want a one-to-one meeting, just to have your questions also, we can have. So you just mention hi. Will connect with you. Vinay sir, what you can do, you can share your number so that अगर किसी investor को directly आपसे connect करना होगा, they can connect with you also. And lately, we can schedule our meeting. I'm also posting Janvi's number.
मोस्टली लोगों के पास मेरा नंबर होगा कि मैं शेयर कर देता हूँ।
Perfect. So I've also shared Janvi's number, so you can connect with Janvi also. If you have any questions related to this presentation, specific to your portfolios, we can. I think there is no question, sir. Better to connect on one-to-one, then we can go deep dive.
ओके सर।
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for taking out time on the weekend. Wish you a very happy weekend. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Sir, anything that you wanted to add?
नहीं, दैट विल बी ऑल सर। बहुत अच्छा आपने पूरा कवर किया, सारे पॉइंट्स कवर कर लिए।
Thank you. Thanks a lot,
और
sir.
काफ़ी क्लैरिटी है ये प्रोडक्ट में। स्ट्रक्चर्ड प्रोडक्ट काफ़ी अच्छा सपोर्ट करता है सभी सभी साइकिल्स में।
Yes, exactly. Done, sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
थैंक यू वेरी मच।
Shelly, bye.